friends, before we dive into the depths of your subconscious and begin to unravel the complex mechanisms of the psyche, I ask you to make a small investment in your own awareness. Please click the subscribe button for this channel and like this video right now. This simple action will help the algorithms find those who, like you, are looking for answers to difficult questions and are ready for real change. And now, let's face the truth. Mentally open your banking app. Look at the final figure. Have you ever wondered why it's exactly that? Why isn't it 10 times larger, but also not zero? We are used to deluding ourselves that our income is a direct result of our conscious efforts, our education, talent, or the number of hours spent in the office. It seems to us that we fully control this process, making measured, logical decisions daily. But what if I told you that the amount in your account is not an accident, not luck, and not even entirely the result of your current labor? It is the final line of code in a complex program that runs in your head in the background. This program was written and installed long before you received your first passport, and certainly long before you earned your first ruble. Your current financial level is not the ceiling of your capabilities. It is the setting of your internal financial thermostat. Have you ever noticed a strange pattern? As soon as you start earning a little more than usual, something unforeseen happens. The car breaks down, the phone gets lost, or urgent expenses arise that instantly return your balance to its usual mark. Or conversely, when money becomes critically scarce, you suddenly mobilize and find a way to return to normal. This is not magic or bad luck. This is the work of your psyche, which strives to keep you in what it considers a safe and familiar zone. For your unconscious, the amount of money is not a matter of comfort or luxury. It is a matter of survival, based on models learned in childhood. If in your family money was associated with hard work, danger, or scandals, your brain will do everything possible to rid you of large sums, protecting you from an imagined threat. How you spend, how you save, and most importantly, how much you allow yourself to receive from the world. This is a direct reflection of the scenarios you observed as a child. Phrases casually dropped by parents, their anxious glances when paying bills, their attitude towards the rich and poor. All of this became the bricks in the foundation of your financial reality. And until we become aware of this hidden scenario, we are doomed to play it out again and again, like a broken record, wondering why, despite all efforts, the result remains the same. Today, we are starting not just a conversation about money, we are starting a process of reprogramming, because the number in your account is merely a symptom, and to change it, we need to treat the cause, not the consequence. Let's look under the hood of your consciousness. To understand why you earn exactly what you earn today, we need to consider the biology of your brain from birth to 7 years of age. At this age, neuroplasticity reaches its peak, and the brain itself operates in a unique mode that neurophysiologists call the theta rhythm state. This is a frequency of brainwaves characteristic of deep hypnosis or meditation in adults. In a practical sense, this means that a child under 7 years old lives without analytical filters. Their critical thinking has not yet formed, so any information coming from outside is recorded directly into the subconscious as absolute truth. When we talk about money, this process becomes critically important. A child does not understand the denomination of banknotes or the complexity of economic processes. They read emotions and biochemistry. Imagine a situation. A 5-year-old child sees their parents tensely discussing a lack of money.
Their mirror neurons instantly copy their facial expressions, body tension, and anxiety. At this moment, a spike occurs in the child's brain between two concepts. Neurons responsible for the concept of money are activated simultaneously with neurons responsible for fear and cortisol production. In neurobiology, there is Hebb's rule. Neurons that fire together, wire together. If the scenario where money equals stress repeats regularly, the brain begins the process of myelination. It wraps this neural connection with a special substance, myelin, turning a thin path into a high-speed information highway. This is how a stable financial neural network is formed. By the age of 7, this process completes the formation of the brain's basic architecture. So-called synaptic pruning occurs. The brain prunes unused connections and cements those that were used most often. If the connection money equals danger or the rich are bad people was used most often, then this belief becomes part of the biological structure of the brain, its operating system. In the future, when you, as an adult, try to earn more, this signal passes through those very ancient, powerful neural highways, causing subconscious resistance and sabotage, because for your limbic system, large amounts of money physically mean a greater threat. Thus, your current income is not just the result of your skills, it is a direct consequence of how your brain's synapses were programmed at an age when you couldn't even count. To understand why money slips through your fingers, or conversely, piles up under the mattress out of fear, we need to delve into the foundation of your psyche, John Bowlby's attachment theory. This is not just relationship psychology. It is the biological basis of your survival, which directly dictates your financial strategies. For an infant, mother is not just a person. Mother is the whole world. She is the source of food, warmth, and most importantly, security. In the first years of life, a so-called working model of the world is formed. If the mother was predictable, warm, and responsive to crying, the child develops a secure attachment style. They learn that the world is safe, that needs will be met, and that they can safely explore the environment, knowing there is a reliable base. Now let's apply this to money. In adult life, money becomes the equivalent of that maternal figure. Capital and savings are your adult safety net. If you have a secure attachment style, you are able to accumulate capital naturally. You don't panic when money decreases, and you don't become euphoric when it increases. You are able to trust the world, invest, and wait for delayed results, because at a deep level you know, everything will be fine. Your financial capacity is stable. However, if the relationship with your mother was built on an anxious type, where her behavior was inconsistent, one moment she's affectionate, the next she's rejecting, or she's simply not around, you grow up with a chronic sense of anxiety. In finance, this manifests as an inability to retain capital. Money becomes a source of stress for you, not peace. As soon as a sum accumulates, anxiety increases, and unconsciously you strive to get rid of it. Impulsive purchases, risky investments, or simply unexplainable spending. You drain your budget to return to a familiar state of deficit and searching, because stability seems suspicious and unreal to your psyche. There is also an avoidant attachment style. If the mother was cold, distant, or ignoring, the child learns to suppress their needs. They decide, I'll manage myself. I don't need anyone. In financial behavior, this often leads to strict saving and accumulation for survival, not for living. Such a person may have enormous capital, but cannot enjoy it. Money for them is a wall they use to shut themselves off from the world. It is not a resource for development, but a tool for isolation and hyper-control.
They do not trust partners, banks, or investors, because basic trust was broken in the cradle. Essentially, your ability to accumulate and preserve capital is a direct projection of how safe you felt in your mother's arms. Capital requires patience, trust in tomorrow, and the ability to tolerate uncertainty. If a frightened child lives within you, unsure if their mother will come to help, you will not be able to build long-term wealth, because any large sum will be perceived either as a threat or as a way to urgently plug an emotional hole. Therefore, working on capital begins not with an Excel spreadsheet, but with restoring that very sense of basic security that may have been lacking in childhood. If the maternal figure in our psyche is responsible for a basic sense of security, for the right to simply exist, and for the ability to accept blessings, then the father figure performs a completely different but critically important function in matters of money. The father is your pass to the big world. He is the guide from the cozy, closed family system into a harsh and competitive society. In the context of money psychology, the father embodies three fundamental pillars: internal law, scale of ambition, and most importantly, the legitimacy of risk. Let's break down the first concept, internal law. Money loves structure. Large capitals cannot be sustained if chaos reigns within you. The image of the father forms in us what is called an internal backbone. This is discipline, the ability to keep one's word to oneself, and the ability to withstand the pressure of responsibility. If the father figure was weak, absent, or conversely, overbearing and tyrannical, a person often develops problems with boundaries. In business, this manifests as an inability to say no, fear of tax authorities or superiors, or conversely, as a senseless rebellion against any rules, which leads to loss of reputation and money. Healthy integration of the paternal figure gives you a calm confidence that you have the right to set your own rules of the game. The second aspect is the scale of ambition. It is the father who shows the child the horizon. The mother teaches to save. The father teaches to conquer. Psychologically, the size of your income is directly related to how big you allow yourself to be in this world. Permission for success, for taking up a lot of space, for your voice to sound loud, all this originates in the relationship with your father. If the father devalued you, or was himself a person who was afraid to show up, you may unconsciously carry a so-called glass ceiling within you. You will sabotage your own growth simply to avoid betraying loyalty to the paternal figure, to avoid becoming symbolically bigger and more successful than him. And the third, perhaps most critical element for entrepreneurs and investors, is the ability to take risks. Money is the energy of expansion. To earn more, you need to step out of your comfort zone, take action with unpredictable results. The father figure provides psychological backing. If a child had the feeling that there was a strong dad behind them who would catch them if they fell off their bike, then in adulthood this transforms into a healthy attitude towards mistakes. Such a person launches startups, invests, changes niches. They are not afraid that a mistake will destroy them. Conversely, with a deficit of this paternal support, the world seems hostile.
Any risk is perceived as a threat to life, and where fear paralyzes the will, money stops flowing. The psyche simply doesn't let you go where it's scary, blocking any opportunities for exponential income growth. Therefore, working through the father figure is not just a sentimental reconciliation with the past, it is a direct investment in your ability to act, compete, and win in the real world. Family myths are not just stories told at the holiday table, they are strict survival instructions packaged in seemingly innocent sayings.
Let's analyze one of the most toxic and widespread beliefs in the post-Soviet space. We weren't rich, so there's no need to start. On the surface, it sounds like a call for modesty, or a kind of resignation to fate. But if we look deeper, into the very program code of this statement, we will see a powerful mechanism blocking any development. When a child regularly hears this phrase, their brain reads a very specific message. Wealth is not for us. It's foreign territory, dangerous and inaccessible. We are a certain kind of people, and our family identity is built precisely on limitations and deprivations. This creates a psychological barrier, which in transactional analysis and systemic family psychotherapy is called loyalty to the clan. Unconsciously, you begin to believe that becoming financially successful means betraying your family. It is equivalent to telling your parents, "You lived wrong, and I will live better." For the subconscious, this sounds like a risk of being cast out of the pack. After all, if everyone in your family lived paycheck to paycheck and you suddenly achieve super income, you become an outsider. You lose connection with your roots. It is this fear of losing belonging that makes intelligent and talented people sabotage their own successes. Every time you approach a financial breakthrough, this belief acts as an emergency brake. You might suddenly get sick before an important deal, forget to send a key email, or simply feel an inexplicable apathy. It's also important to understand the historical context of this myth. For our grandparents and parents, this phrase was a form of psychological anesthesia and protection. In their reality, standing out was indeed dangerous. At various periods of history, having capital could lead to dispossession, interrogations, or criminal showdowns. By convincing themselves and their children that there was no need to start, they protected their psyche from disappointments and physical threats. But the problem is that times have changed, and the instruction remains the same. Now this phrase has become a mental virus. It masks the fear of responsibility, novelty, and scale under the guise of age-old family wisdom. Until you recognize this myth precisely as an outdated, alien script, you will be doomed to reproduce your parents' financial ceiling, even if you objectively possess all the resources and talents to break through it and reach a completely new level of life. Do you think your relationship with money was formed only when your parents first gave you pocket money or refused to buy you a toy? If only it were that simple. Sometimes your financial thermostat is broken even before you are born. We are moving on to the sixth and perhaps deepest layer of your financial program, transgenerational trauma. This concept describes the emotional and psychological burden that is passed from ancestors to descendants, bypassing consciousness. In the context of the post-Soviet space, this is especially relevant because the history of the 20th century rolled like a steamroller over millions of families. Let's face the truth. If you live here, then with a high degree of probability, there were stories of dispossession, repression, exile, or total deficit in your family line. Consider the mechanism of dispossession. Imagine your great-grandfather. He was a strong farmer, worked hard, owned a house, livestock, grain reserves. He was rich by the standards of his village. And then, one day, they came for him. All his property was taken away. His house was burned or given to the village council. He himself was exiled to Siberia or shot in front of his family. His wife and children were left destitute, persecuted, enemies of the people. At that moment, in the collective unconscious of your family, a reinforced concrete belief is formed. Having resources is mortally dangerous. Wealth equals death. Don't stick out.
If you have something valuable, they will come and take it. Or, even worse, physically destroy you. This survival program is passed on to the next generation. Grandparents teach their children, be quiet, don't show prosperity, live like everyone else. And then you are born. It's the 21st century, a market economy, opportunities at every turn. You want to earn, you build a business, you climb the career ladder. But as soon as your income approaches a certain level, an inexplicable anxiety switches on inside. Your body literally starts screaming about danger. You might suddenly get sick before an important deal. You might squander all your savings on nonsense just to get rid of the burning surplus in your pocket. Or you simply fall into a stupor and procrastination. This is not laziness, this is loyalty to your family system. Your psyche is protecting you from the fate of your great-grandfather. For your subconscious, large amounts of money are an alarm signal, a harbinger of trouble. It's safe to be poor. It's safe to be inconspicuous. A second powerful factor is the experience of deficit and hunger. Wars, blockades, post-war devastation, empty shelves of the 90s. When your ancestors starved, food was the only currency that mattered. Money depreciated instantly. It couldn't be eaten. How does this affect you today? It forms a syndrome of delayed life and pathological hoarding, or conversely, compulsive spending. You might notice that you can't calmly look at a full refrigerator. You need to eat everything before it spoils. Or you can't allow money to just sit in your account. It needs to be immediately converted into goods, into things, into something material, because there is no trust in paper and numbers. Genetic memory screams that tomorrow it might not be there. There is another aspect, survivor's guilt. If your ancestors lived in the harshest conditions, worked to exhaustion for pennies, then who are you to live easily and richly? When you start earning more than your father or grandfather, you may be overcome by an irrational sense of guilt. You are, in a way, betraying their suffering with your success. To suppress this guilt, you unconsciously sabotage your growth, returning to a survival level that is understood and accepted in your family. Transgenerational trauma is not esotericism. It is epigenetics and behavioral patterns. You absorb your mother's fear when she counts pennies before payday. You read your father's tension when it comes to large purchases. You inherit the strategy, "We weren't rich, no need to start," as the only correct survival strategy. Until you see this connection, you will be fighting windmills. You will take financial literacy courses, learn to invest, but the internal circuit breaker will constantly trip the fuses. Realizing that your fear of money belongs not to you, but to your grandmother who survived hunger, or to your great-grandfather who lost his farm, this is the first step towards separating the concepts of money and death. In your reality, money is safe, but your limbic system needs proof, and we will work on how to provide it. Remember that moment from childhood. You're sitting at the kitchen table, already full. The food literally won't go down your throat, but the authoritative figure of your grandmother or mother hovers over you with a phrase that will become your financial curse. You won't leave the table until you finish eating. Or a more dramatic variation about how bread shouldn't be thrown away because children are starving somewhere. It seems like it's just about teaching frugality and respect for other people's labor, but at a neurobiological level, a terrible thing happens at that moment. Your brain learns to ignore its own body's signals of satiety for external approval, and even more importantly, forms a pattern of fear of leftovers.
The psychology of scarcity, ingrained by the clean plate club habit, directly blocks your ability to invest. Let's break down this mechanism. When a child is forced to finish eating against their will, they are instilled with a basic belief. The resource is limited, it might disappear, so it must be consumed immediately and completely. The subconscious reinforces the idea that having leftovers is not a cause for joy or saving, but a source of anxiety and guilt. Leftover food is a sin. Let's transfer this to adult life and your bank account. Money is the same resource, the same energy as food. A person with a clean plate syndrome, upon receiving a salary, unconsciously strives to zero out this resource. They feel physically uncomfortable seeing free money in their account, just as they were afraid to see unfinished porridge as a child. The brain screams, "Consume this now, otherwise it will be taken away, spoil, or depreciate." As a result, you spend everything down to the last crumb, creating a financial zero by the end of the month. You finish your salary. That investing is the complete opposite of consuming. Investing requires you to be able to leave a resource untouched today so that it can grow tomorrow. It's the ability to look at a full plate and have the will to put a portion of it in the refrigerator. For a person with a scarcity psychology, this is unnatural. It seems to them that deferred money is lost money because they didn't get an immediate dopamine response from it through a purchase or service. Moreover, the habit of finishing everything creates tunnel vision for survival. You focus on not losing the little you have now instead of thinking about expanding opportunities. An investor thinks in terms of abundance. There are many resources in the world and they can be multiplied. A person with a deficit trauma thinks in terms of scarcity. There is little resource and it needs to be urgently absorbed. That is why even after starting to earn more, people with this program simply increase their consumption level, continuing to spend everything down to the last penny. They buy more expensive cars, eat in more expensive restaurants, but their capital remains at zero. They simply increased the portion on their plate, but the habit of licking it clean remained the same. Until you allow yourself the right to leave food on your plate without guilt, you will not be able to allow yourself to leave money in your account without the desire to spend it immediately. Investments begin where the fear of hunger tomorrow ends. We come to one of the deepest and most non-obvious causes of financial self-sabotage.
This is a mechanism that in systemic psychology is called loyalty to the family system. Have you ever noticed a strange, sticky feeling of guilt when you allow yourself something that your parents could never afford? Perhaps you order a business class taxi, buy an expensive gadget, or simply have lunch at a restaurant where the bill is half of your grandmother's pension. And instead of pure joy and pride in yourself, a heaviness rises inside, as if you are doing something forbidden, as if you are betraying someone important. This isn't just modesty or upbringing. An ancient biological instinct for survival is at play here. For millennia, belonging to the pack, to one's tribe, was the sole guarantee of life for a human child. Being cast out meant certain death. Therefore, a program is hardwired into our subconscious. To survive, I must be like my kin. I must share their values, their habits, and most importantly, their fate. If your family lived difficult lives for generations, if your parents economized on the bare necessities, counted every penny, and perceived money as a source of constant anxiety, then poverty was recorded in your subconscious as an access code to the family system. Suffering and deprivation became synonymous with belonging.
Poverty became a way of saying, I am like you, I am flesh of your flesh. When you start earning money that qualitatively changes your standard of living, when you start living easily and abundantly, your subconscious raises an alarm. It feels as if you are separating from the pack. Success is subconsciously read as betrayal. An inner voice, often not even formed into words, whispers, "Who are you to live better than your father? How dare you enjoy life when your mother suffered and sacrificed herself her whole life?" Living better than your parents is shameful because it looks like devaluing their difficult experience. It is this shame that triggers the self-regulation mechanism. You may notice that as soon as your income breaks a certain barrier, something unforeseen happens. Your car breaks down, your phone gets lost, urgent health expenses arise, or you simply impulsively squander money on nonsense. This is how your loyalty works. You unconsciously get rid of surpluses to return to your family's financial level. By squandering money, you experience a paradoxical relief. Now you are again in need, you are again suffering, which means you are again one of them, you are safe, and the connection with your lineage is restored. The biggest trap here is that consciously, parents may genuinely wish you wealth. They may say, live better than us, that's what we worked for. But at an unconscious level, at the level of the family system, the law of homeostasis operates, the desire to maintain habitual equilibrium. Your prosperity against the background of their deprivation creates enormous tension in the system. And until you separate in your mind the love for your parents and the need to repeat their financial fate, this invisible leash will pull you back every time you try to fly too high. We move on to one of the most common and socially approved yet destructive scenarios. This is the good boy or good girl syndrome, where workaholism becomes not a tool for achieving success, but a desperate attempt to buy love and the right to exist. Let's face the truth. If you recognize yourself in this description, then most likely in your childhood, love was a conditional currency. You were not accepted simply by virtue of your birth. You were accepted and praised only when you were functional. A 5 in your report card, a perfectly clean room, silence when your parents were tired. You learned a cruel lesson very early. Until you are useful, you are nothing. You learned that being yourself is unsafe, and being convenient is beneficial. In adult life, this mechanism transforms into neurotic workaholism. You project the parent figure onto your boss, business partners, or even clients. You work 12 hours a day not because the tasks require it, and not because you see it as a financial strategy. You do it because you subconsciously expect to be patted on the head and told how well you've done. You try to earn the right to live through overwork. The problem is that this scenario places an iron ceiling on your income. Good girls and good boys don't get rich. Do you know why? Because they don't know how to demand. They only know how to wait for a reward. They are ashamed to ask for a raise, ashamed to name a high price for their services, because any conversation about money seems to them like ingratitude or greed. They are afraid that if they state their needs, they will stop being good and will be rejected. The result is a paradox. You are the most diligent employee. You carry the department. You save projects, but you earn less than those who work half-heartedly but are not dependent on external approval. Convenient people are used, but they are not paid super profits. Moreover, a good person has a subconscious prohibition against easy money. If money comes without suffering, without sweat and blood, they feel guilty and strive to get rid of it. It seems to them that they didn't deserve it. Your workaholism is an anesthetic.
You load yourself with tasks so you don't hear the inner emptiness and anxiety. But as long as you try to buy the world's love with your exhaustion, you are selling your time and health at the lowest possible rate. The way out of this scenario begins with understanding that your worth is not equal to your productivity, and money is simply a tool of exchange, not an assessment of your moral character. Let's talk about the sweetest trap that millions of people fall into,
This is overprotection. At first glance, it seems that maximally caring parents are a ticket to a happy future, but in the context of money and entrepreneurship, this often becomes a death sentence. There is a psychological term, learned helplessness. It was introduced by Martin Seligman, and this phenomenon perfectly explains why talented and intelligent people spend years on tiny salaries or fail one startup after another. The mechanism forms simply. When a child tries to tie their shoelaces and their mother slaps their hands and says, "Let me do it, you'll take too long and do it badly," the child's brain records a simple but destructive program. This program states, "My actions don't matter. The result doesn't depend on me. The world is too complicated, and I am incompetent." If this repeats for years, with homework, with choosing after-school activities, with resolving conflicts in the yard, then by the age of 20, we have a person with an atrophied will. In business, this is a disaster. Entrepreneurship is essentially solving an endless stream of problems under conditions of total uncertainty. A person with learned helplessness falls into a stupor at the first encounter with an investor's refusal, a difficult client, or a cash flow gap. They don't look for a solution, they look for a savior. They subconsciously expect someone big and strong, a boss, a partner, a mentor, or the government, to come and fix everything, just as their parents did in childhood. But the market is not a loving mother. The market is indifferent and cruel. It pays money only for results and assumed responsibility. Overprotection kills the main skill of a wealthy person, tolerance for mistakes. A child who is protected from every fall and every scratch grows into an adult who is pathologically afraid of risk. For them, a mistake is not an experience or feedback from reality, but confirmation of their own worthlessness and a signal of mortal danger. Therefore, such people choose safe but low-paying positions where everything is already decided for them by instructions, and they avoid any opportunities that require initiative. They remain poor not because they lack talent or ideas, but because in childhood they were deprived of the right to independent struggle and the right to their own bumps and bruises, upon which financial success grows. We move on to one of the deepest and most non-obvious beliefs that literally strangles your financial potential. This is the prohibition on self-expression. Recall situations from childhood. You laughed loudly, ran, sang, or just wanted to show your parents something important, and in response you heard a sharp reprimand. Don't shout, don't stand out, be quieter, be more modest. What will people think? For a child, these phrases are not just a call for order. They are a signal that their natural energy, their voice, and their very existence in bright manifestation are something shameful, dangerous, or inappropriate. The psyche records a clear algorithm where being noticeable means being rejected, and safety lies exclusively in the shadows, in a state of invisibility. Now look at your career or business through the prism of this program. Money is always the equivalent of attention and energy exchange. To earn a high income, you need to assert yourself. You need to withstand the gazes of other people. You need to open your mouth and confidently state your price.
But as soon as you try to name a high cost for your services, that same childhood trigger goes off. Your subconscious perceives a high check as an act of loud shouting, as that very sticking out for which you were once punished or shamed. A low check becomes your protective capsule. When you take little money, you remain small, inconspicuous, and as a result, in illusory safety. You don't raise prices not because your services aren't worth it, and not because of market competition, but because you subconsciously fear that if you become too big and noticeable, punishment will inevitably follow. This block is often even physically felt as a lump in your throat when trying to name an amount, or as an irrational desire to shrink and disappear during important negotiations. As long as you believe that being quiet and convenient is the main virtue, your income will remain at a survival level, because big money requires a voice and an internal permission to take up a lot of space in this world. Now we come to one of the darkest and most complex topics, which often goes unnoticed, but governs your life with incredible power. This is the theme of money as a tool of power and suppression. Recall how resources were distributed in your family. Was money merely a tool for living, or did it turn into a lever of pressure, a means of punishment or reward for good behavior? For many children, money becomes the first experience of political games and harsh manipulations, where parents act as dictators and the child is forced to either obey or rebel. The most common scenario is financial blackmail. Phrases like, "As long as you live under my roof, you'll do what I say," or "I feed and clothe you, so no one cares about your opinion," indelibly link two concepts in a child's subconscious: money and humiliation. The child learns a terrible lesson. Those with money have power, and those without it are powerless and voiceless. This forms a deep-seated fear of financial dependence. You begin to believe that accepting help, asking for money, or even entering into a partnership means falling back into that childhood trap where your will is taken away. This experience creates two polar, yet equally destructive life scenarios.
The first is pathological hyper-responsibility and avoidance of any help. You might work to exhaustion, refuse investments, business loans, or partner support because you subconsciously expect that for every ruble received, you will have to pay with your freedom. It seems safer to be poor but proud and independent than rich but controlled. You are afraid to scale because large sums of money or obligations to investors feel like returning to parental control. The second scenario is the unconscious reproduction of the aggressor's role. When you acquire money, you start using it the same way your parents did, to control loved ones, manipulate your partner, or assert yourself at the expense of subordinates. You might think it's care, but in reality you are buying loyalty and the right to command because you don't know another model of interacting with finances. Another important aspect is the experience of begging. If as a child you had to humiliate yourself to get pocket money or necessary things, if every request was accompanied by a lecture about how hard money is earned and how ungrateful you are, then in adulthood, the process of setting prices for your services becomes torture. You physically cannot name a high price or ask for a raise because your body remembers the shame and fear of rejection you felt towards your parents. At this moment, you are not a professional discussing a contract, but again that small child who fears the adult's anger. The fear of financial dependence blocks your ability to trust the world and build healthy economic relationships. You perceive an employer, client, or business partner as a potential tyrant who wants to enslave you.
Because of this, you either take a defensive stance, which pushes people and money away, or, conversely, surrender in advance, agreeing to enslaving terms because you are used to the idea that whoever pays has the right to everything. To break this cycle, you need to realize money is just a resource, an energy of exchange, not a leash you are being pulled by. Adult relationships are built on agreements, not submission, and your task is to separate money from your self-worth and security. Now we move on to one of the most curious and statistically confirmed theories that links your psychology to your bank account. We are talking about your birth order. Alfred Adler, one of the pillars of psychoanalysis, was the first to notice that one's place in the family hierarchy shapes a unique lifestyle. But today, we will look at this through the lens of money. Older, middle, and younger children grow up with completely different financial instincts because their adaptation to parental resources occurred under different conditions. Let's start with older children. If you are the firstborn, your financial strategy is often built on responsibility, control, and conservatism. From the moment a younger sibling appeared, you faced the trauma of being dethroned. You were the only one, and then you became one of many. To regain parental attention, you most likely chose the strategy of being good, proper, and adult. Statistics are relentless. Among CEOs, top managers, and presidents, the overwhelming majority are firstborns. You know how to work within a structure, you respect hierarchy, and you excel at administration. However, there is a flip side to this coin. Your main financial problem is fear of failure and perfectionism. Older children often earn a lot, but through hard work, fearing to delegate tasks because deep inside there is a belief, if I don't do it myself, everything will fall apart. In investments, you are prone to low risk, preferring reliability over super profits. You often become a hostage to your career, choosing status and social approval instead of financial freedom or creative risk. Now let's look at middle children. These are perhaps the most interesting players in the financial field. If you are a middle child, you were never the sole center of attention. You didn't get the privileges of the older sibling or the overprotection of the younger one. You grew up in conditions of scarce parental resources, and this shaped in you perhaps the most useful skill for business, the ability to negotiate. Middle children are natural diplomats and negotiators. Your earning strategy is often built not on a rigid hierarchy like older siblings, nor on charisma like younger ones, but on networking and connections. You can see situations from different angles, which makes you excellent entrepreneurs and intermediaries. You are less tied to home and family rules, so you are more likely to move for a career or change professions. But your shadow side is the feeling that life is unfair to you. Sometimes this pushes middle children to prove their significance through conspicuous consumption, or conversely, makes them settle for little, believing that big money is not for them. And finally, younger children. If you are the last child in the family, your financial program is a paradox. On the one hand, you grew up in an atmosphere where much was forgiven, and your parents were already less anxious and more financially secure. This fosters a high tolerance for risk in younger children.
More often than others, you pursue creative professions, startups, or show business. Your superpower is charisma and the ability to attract attention, which in the era of personal branding converts into money fastest. Younger children often earn money playfully, breaking rules that older siblings hold sacred. But here lies the main trap: financial infantilism.
Deep in the subconscious of the youngest child lives the belief that if they fall, someone big and strong, parents or older siblings, will surely catch them. This can lead to impulsive spending, a lack of savings, and the expectation that financial problems will resolve themselves. Younger children often get rich quickly, but can just as quickly lose everything because they lack the discipline of firstborns. Understanding this dynamic is critically important. It's not a sentence, but a map of your psyche. If you are the eldest, you need to learn to take risks and let go of control. If you are the middle, you need to believe that you deserve to be first, not just a link. And if you are the youngest, you need to implement a strict financial planning system so that your talent doesn't crash due to a cash flow gap. Your childhood gave you a starter set of tools, but only you decide how to use them in the adult economy. Let's honestly look at one of the most painful paradoxes of adult life. From first grade, we were taught a simple formula: get straight A's, behave well, and you'll be successful and rich. But reality cruelly laughs at this notion. You've probably noticed that former C students often manage companies where gold medalists work as employees for a fixed salary, afraid to ask for a raise. Why does this happen? The root of the problem lies in a specific school trauma and the so-called straight A student syndrome. The school grading system is fundamentally built on finding mistakes, not on encouraging uniqueness. Remember your notebooks. Everything done correctly was taken for granted, while every smudge was aggressively underlined in red ink. For years, this formed a stable neural connection in your brain. Mistake equals pain. Mistake equals public humiliation. Mistake equals rejection by a significant adult. As a result, growing up, the straight A student is pathologically afraid of making a wrong move. They suffer from paralyzing perfectionism, which is actually not a noble pursuit of the ideal, but a banal defense mechanism against potential criticism. In business and income growth, this is fatal. Money in the modern world comes to those who quickly test hypotheses, make mistakes, draw conclusions, and move on. The straight A student, on the other hand, will polish a presentation or product for months, never releasing it to the market because, in their opinion, it is not perfect enough. Moreover, school teaches you to play by someone else's rules. Memorize a paragraph, answer as the teacher wants, get a grade. This is a linear dependency that creates an illusion of predictability in the world. But the market is chaotic and nonlinear. There are no teachers here to give you a grade, and most terrifying for the straight A student, there are no predetermined correct answers at the back of the textbook. It is in this vacuum of external validation that imposter syndrome is born. Even when yesterday's straight A student achieves objective success and earns money, they feel like a fraud. They feel their success is accidental, simply because no one officially gave them a diploma and said, "Sit down, A+." They constantly await exposure because their self-esteem is still tied to an external frame of reference that simply doesn't exist in adult life. At the same time, C students who in school learned to improvise, negotiate with teachers, cheat, and delegate homework turned out to be better adapted to the economy. They learned early that the world wouldn't collapse from a bad grade, that you don't have to know everything yourself if you know someone who does, and that results are more important than formal adherence to rituals. While the straight A student waits for a clear technical specification and permission to start, the C student creates opportunities out of thin air.
Therefore, if you feel that your income has hit a glass ceiling, despite your high qualifications, most likely you are still subconsciously waiting for life to give you an A for the absence of mistakes, while big money is only paid for the courage to make mistakes and create your own rules of the game. Let's talk about the paradox that ruins the lives of many talented people. We have come to one of the deepest and most non-obvious problems, the fear of big money, which manifests not just as a thought, but as a physical illness or a panic attack. You may have noticed a strange pattern. As soon as your affairs improve, as soon as a major deal, promotion, or unexpected bonus appears on the horizon, something goes wrong with your body. A sudden cold right before important negotiations, a migraine that puts you to bed on a day when you need to be maximally productive, or an irrational, sticky anxiety that overwhelms you precisely when you look at the increased balance in your bank account.
This is not an accident or bad luck. This is psychosomatics. Your body literally rejects success. Why does this happen? The answer again lies in those very childhood settings that we have been talking about throughout this video. If in your childhood money was associated with tension, parental scandals, or a threat to safety, your nervous system learned a cruel lesson. Money is danger. For your ancient reptilian brain, poverty and lack of resources are a clear, familiar, and therefore safe environment. You survived in it, you adapted to it. But abundance is an unknown. The unknown is scarier for the subconscious than guaranteed need. When your standard of living suddenly rises, your internal security system sounds an alarm. The so-called financial thermostat turns on. Imagine it is set to a certain temperature, say the income level of your parents. As soon as the temperature rises, the system tries to cool the room, that is, to return you to your usual state of lack of money. Psychosomatics acts as an ideal tool for sabotage here. Illness gives you a legal right to stop, not take responsibility, and ultimately lose opportunities, returning to your comfort zone, even if that comfort is actually suffering. By the way, right now you can take a simple step to start rewriting these destructive programs. Click the subscribe button and like this video. This is not just support for the channel, it's your signal to the universe and your own brain that you are ready to receive new, useful information and change your life. Do this to solidify your intention, and let's continue. It's important to understand that the fear of big money often masquerades as laziness or lack of motivation, but on a chemical level, it's a surge of cortisol. When you receive an amount exceeding your internal norm, you experience not joy, but stress. Your body tightens. You might start to fuss, quickly spend this money on nonsense, just to get rid of the tension it brought with it. Or, as we've already discussed, you get sick. This is a protective mechanism of the psyche, trying to save you from the pain that it seems to it will inevitably follow wealth. Perhaps in your family memory there are stories of dispossession or attacks because of money. These traumas are passed down through generations, and now, as you approach success, your body screams, "Stop, there's death." Realizing that your anxiety is not intuition warning you of a mistake, but a program malfunction is the first step to healing. You must teach your nervous system to withstand a high level of money energy without physically breaking down. Have you ever found yourself thinking that despite all your efforts, courses, affirmations, and overtime, the financial ceiling remains a concrete slab over your head? At this moment, it's very painful to admit one thing, but it's necessary. If you still don't have the money you dream of, it means that right now it's beneficial for you.
This sounds absurd and causes internal resistance because consciously you sincerely want wealth. But in psychology, there is a concept of secondary gain. This is a hidden bonus that you receive from your problem. Your subconscious is an ideal bodyguard, whose main task is to ensure your safety and survival, not to buy you a new car or a trip to a resort. And if in your internal map of reality, large sums of money are marked as dangerous, your subconscious will do everything to protect you from them. Let's look at the most common secondary gains of poverty, which are formed precisely in childhood. The first and most powerful is physical safety. If your ancestors experienced dispossession, repression, or the difficult 90s where people were killed for money, then in your genetic memory the equation is recorded: money equals death. To be poor means to be inconspicuous. No one will come, nothing will be taken away, no one will envy or harm your children. The absence of money guarantees a peaceful sleep, and your subconscious blocks income simply so that you live long. The second benefit is preserving relationships and loyalty to the family. Imagine that your entire family, all your friends and acquaintances, live modestly, constantly complaining about tariffs and bosses. If you suddenly get rich, you will become an outsider to them. You risk facing envy, condemnation, or requests for loans that will destroy friendships. For our ancient limbic system, expulsion from the pack is equivalent to death. Therefore, it is easier for the subconscious to sabotage your success than to endure this fear of loneliness and rejection. You remain poor, but you are one of them, loved and accepted. The third hidden benefit is the removal of responsibility and the right to pity. Poverty is a very convenient infantile position. As long as you don't have money, you have every moral right to blame the government, the economy, your parents, or an unfair boss. You receive sympathy and support. Big money requires adult decisions, risk management, and strict discipline. The subconscious can protect you from this burden, allowing you to remain an eternal child that someone else should take care of.
The fourth benefit is moral superiority. Recall the attitudes from Soviet cinema and literature. The rich were often portrayed as greedy, evil, and dishonest, while the poor were proud, kind, and soulful. If within you lives the conviction that you can't earn much with honest work, then poverty becomes proof of your integrity. You are in a way telling the world, yes, my pockets are empty, but my conscience is clear. Remaining without money is a way to preserve your self-image as a good person. As long as these secondary benefits outweigh the advantages of having money, you will not move forward. Your internal computer blocks the wealth program, considering it a viral threat to your security system. Your task now is not to scold yourself for this, but to see these hidden mechanisms. Ask yourself honestly, what terrible thing will happen if I have this money tomorrow? The answer to this question is the key to the safe that your subconscious so carefully guards from yourself. The next scenario is earning through resistance, or the so-called rebellion against the system. This is perhaps the most energy-consuming and dramatic path of all possible. Here, money becomes not a means of comfort, but an instrument of revenge and proof of one's own significance. If in childhood you were constantly controlled, suppressed, compared to your mom's friend's son, or even worse, openly told that nothing good would come of you, your psyche forms a powerful compensatory defense mechanism. You decide to prove to them all, at all costs, how cruelly they were mistaken. Your career or business turns into an endless crusade for recognition. At first glance, this looks incredibly effective.
Anger, deep resentment, and a burning desire to show up your parents are the most powerful, almost nuclear fuel. On this aggressive energy, people move mountains, build huge corporations, buy the most expensive penthouses and sports cars, work 18 hours a day without weekends or vacations. Outwardly, this looks like a story of brilliant success. But let's look at the essence of this process. All this turbulent activity happens not because you genuinely want it, and not because you really need these millions. You are still having that same childish mental argument with your mom or dad. You buy a status item not to enjoy it, but to, even if only in your head, throw the receipt on their table and shout, "Look what I achieved without your help." The problem is that this fuel is extremely toxic. Sooner or later, the body stops enduring the tension because you are running not towards your true goal, but away from the childhood pain of rejection. And the most terrible thing in this scenario happens at the moment of triumph. You climb to the very top, you have all the attributes of power and wealth, but inside there is a deafening emptiness. Your parents may not even appreciate your success, saying that you should have become a doctor, not a businessman, or they may no longer be alive at all, and the inertia of the struggle remains. You find that you have spent your best years warring with ghosts of the past, never starting to live your own life. This is a direct and guaranteed path to severe emotional burnout and depression, because money earned out of spite never brings joy. It brings only temporary relief, followed by even greater fatigue. We move on to one of the most socially approved, yet financially destructive scenarios. This is the rescuer scenario. At first glance, such people seem saintly. You are always ready to lend money, even if you are short on it. You take on extra work to help out colleagues, but you're too shy to ask for payment. You support relatives who could perfectly well work themselves, and you constantly solve other people's problems at your own expense. But let's face the truth. In the context of money, the rescuer role is a mechanism for draining resources. The deep-seated belief here is, I have a right to exist and be loved only when I am useful and when I sacrifice myself for others. If I'm doing well and someone else nearby is doing poorly, I feel unbearable guilt. The roots of this scenario go deep into childhood. Often, such children grew up in families where they had to grow up early. Perhaps one of the parents was infantile, dependent, or constantly in a victim position, complaining about life. The child, to survive and maintain attachment, took on the role of emotional and sometimes physical caregiver. You learn to read the needs of your mom or dad before your own. You learn that your desires are secondary, and being selfish is the worst accusation. Now, in adulthood, you project this model onto your finances. Money for you becomes a tool to buy love and security. You cannot name a high price for your services because you feel you will offend the client or that they don't have money. You hire not professionals, but those who need help, turning your business into a charity fund.
You spend your earnings not on investments in your development or capital, but on paying off friends' or relatives' debts. The paradox of the rescuer scenario is that it blocks your financial growth in two ways. Firstly, you unconsciously get rid of money as soon as it comes in, because having resources causes anxiety. It needs to be urgently given to someone to confirm your goodness. Secondly, you surround yourself with people who parasitize on your kindness. This creates a vicious circle. The more you rescue, the more helpless your entourage becomes, and the more resources are demanded of you. It's important to understand a harsh truth. Rescuing is not about kindness, it's about control and pride.
When you give money to those who don't know how to handle it, you're not helping them, you're enabling their irresponsibility. And most importantly, you are robbing your true self and your future self. As long as your focus is shifted to solving other people's problems, your own financial ambitions, dreams, and needs remain in a blind spot. You cannot build capital, because in your worldview, resources belong not to you, but to those who suffer the loudest. The way out of this scenario begins with recognizing that your financial well-being does not make you a bad person, and other people's problems are the responsibility of other adults. We move from theory to concrete actions. Right now, we will conduct a deep diagnosis to bring your hidden financial blocks to the surface. Knowing the problem is already half its solution, but to know the problem, you need to feel it. Financial blocks hide not in logical reasoning, they hide in the body and in instantaneous, uncontrolled emotions. Take a deep breath and focus on your sensations. I will present you with situations, and your task is to catch the very first instinctive reaction that arises a fraction of a second before your mind kicks in. Situation 1. Imagine that right now, at this very second, an amount 10 times your usual monthly income lands in your bank account. This is real money. It's yours. Don't rush to rejoice. Listen carefully to yourself. What was that first feeling? Was it fear? Did the thought flash that it was a bank error and they would take it back? Did you feel an urge to quickly transfer this money somewhere, pay off debts, or hide it so you wouldn't see the number? Or perhaps you were overwhelmed by a feeling of guilt, as if you didn't deserve it. If instead of calm joy you felt anxiety or a desire to get rid of the money, this is a sure sign that your internal capacity is not ready to accept such a volume of energy. Now let's change the situation. Imagine you need to name the cost of your services to a new client or ask your boss for a raise. You decide to name a price 3 times higher than you're used to. Right now, out loud or to yourself, firmly state that number. What happens to your body? Did your throat tighten? Did you feel tension in your solar plexus or a cold in your stomach? Did you immediately want to justify yourself, slouch, and say, "But I can give you a discount"? This bodily contraction is your trigger. This is the moment when the childhood program takes over from adult logical thinking. Your body literally screams that asserting yourself and your needs is dangerous. Let's dig even deeper. Recall or simulate a situation where you need to spend a large sum of money exclusively on yourself, not on training that will pay off, not on family, not on repairs or household needs, but on pure, useless pleasure or luxury. If at that moment you feel a heaviness in your chest or a sticky feeling of shame, this is a marker of a strict prohibition on owning resources. Your subconscious signals that being selfish is punishable, and money should serve anyone but you personally. And the last test to identify negative projections. Imagine a very rich person. It could be someone from the Forbes list or just a successful acquaintance. Look at them with your inner eye. What is the first word association that comes to mind? Thief? Swindler? Arrogant? Or perhaps loneliness? If your associative array is colored with negativity or pity, it means there is a powerful roadblock in your head. To be rich equals to be bad or unhappy. Your psyche, like a faithful guardian, simply protects you from wealth so that you remain, in its opinion, a good and safe person. Record these sensations. Remember exactly where in your body fear, shame, or guilt resonated. These are not just nerves. This is a somatic map of your financial traumas. It is with these bodily reactions, and not just with numbers and tables, that we will have to work to rewrite the scenario laid down in early childhood. As long as these triggers are active, you will unconsciously sabotage any of your success just to avoid experiencing this tension. We have reached perhaps the most painful and important point in our entire conversation. It often happens that a person has worked through their beliefs, mastered financial literacy, and started investing, but the glass ceiling remains unbroken. The reason for this stagnation almost always lies in incomplete separation from parents. In the psychology of money, there is a cruel but absolutely fair axiom that you need to remember. Children do not have money. Children receive pocket money, gifts, sweets, but they do not manage capital, build business empires, or bear responsibility for large resources. If you are 30, 40, or 50 years old, but you are still emotionally dependent on your mom's or dad's evaluation, if you seek their approval or fear their condemnation, then from the psyche's perspective, you remain a child. And big money is not meant for a child. It is unsafe for them. Let's delve deeper into the mechanics of this process. An unseparated person lives with a constant eye on the parent figure, which is introjected, that is, built into their own consciousness. When you want to take a risk, start your own business, or simply raise the price for your services, the inner parent may whisper with a voice of anxiety, "Don't stick out. It's dangerous. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush." But even more terrifying is the mechanism of unconscious loyalty. If your parents lived modestly or poorly, your financial success may be perceived by your subconscious as a betrayal. It seems to you that by becoming rich, you will stop belonging to your clan, become an outsider, rejected. Therefore, you unconsciously sabotage deals and squander money to remain one of them, to be a good and loyal child to your family system. It is important to understand that separation is not just moving to a different apartment or city. You can live on another continent, but if every financial success serves only as an attempt to prove to your father that he was wrong when he didn't believe in you, you are not free. You are still serving this conflict. You are spending your life energy not on creation, but on proving a point. Money earned from a position of proof is always acquired with enormous difficulty and often leads to burnout, because its true purpose is not your comfort, but serving your childhood neurosis. The true transition to an adult financial position occurs when you allow your parents to have their fate, and yourself, yours. When their opinion about your money becomes just an opinion, not the ultimate truth. An adult position is the ability to withstand your parents' disappointment that you didn't become who they wanted you to be, without breaking yourself in the process. Only at this moment is a colossal amount of energy freed up, which was previously spent on maintaining connection through dependence. And it is this energy that converts into real adult income. Adult money comes only to those who are ready to take responsibility for their lives, abandoning the sweet but impoverished role of an eternal child. Now we turn to one of the most painful and hidden drains on your energy and money. This is the 21st, and perhaps the most difficult stage to accept. It's about the financial umbilical cord that many people don't cut until old age. We are talking about a toxic sense of obligation to parents and relatives that literally eats away at your capital. Many of you live with a deeply ingrained belief, "I owe my parents for raising me." This sounds noble, but in the context of money psychology, it often turns into a neurotic dependence. You try to monetize your love, or even worse, buy your way out of guilt.
Think about how many times you've made financial decisions not in your own favor, but to please your family, cover their debts, pay for unnecessary purchases, or simply give money because that's how it's done? The mechanism here is deadly for your budget. As soon as you start earning more, your family unconsciously, and sometimes quite consciously, begins to perceive this. Suddenly, the refrigerator breaks down, the dacha urgently needs repairs, your third cousin has a misfortune, and you, driven by guilt and the desire to be a good son or daughter, open your wallet. You become a rescuer. But the truth is, rescuing is not generosity. It's a form of control and dependence. When you give resources out of a sense of obligation, you are not helping your loved ones, you are incapacitating them, depriving them of responsibility for their own lives. And you are permanently blocking your financial growth. Why? Because your subconscious puts up a block. Why should I earn more if all the surplus will still go not to my goals, but will be squandered by relatives? The brain sabotages your income to protect you from exploitation. The feeling of an unpayable debt to parents is a black hole. You didn't ask to be born. Life is a gift, not a loan that needs to be paid back with interest for the rest of your days. Until you separate the concepts of gratitude and financial slavery, you will not be able to build your own capital. Your budget should primarily serve your goals, your future, and specifically your nuclear family. Toxic connections manifest in relatives starting to manipulate your success, making you feel ashamed for living better than them. It's a crab bucket. As soon as one crab tries to climb out, the others pull it back to the bottom. If every financial breakthrough you make is accompanied by increased demands from relatives, you will never get rich. You will simply become an ATM for other people. Breaking this bond doesn't mean abandoning loved ones in need. It means setting firm financial boundaries. It's the ability to say no when a request contradicts your long-term plans. It's understanding that you are not obliged to be a pension fund for your parents if it jeopardizes the survival of your own family. Until you put yourself and your financial interests first, you will continue to drain energy into the past instead of investing it in the future. Freedom from toxic debt is the foundation without which the walls of your wealth will simply crumble. We move on to the deepest and most transformative part of our conversation. Many mistakenly believe that financial problems are solved exclusively with a calculator, a change of job, or strict budgeting. But the truth is that if the root of your poverty or financial ceiling lies in the emotional trauma of a 5-year-old child, no Excel spreadsheet will help you. Your wallet is in the hands of your inner child, and if it is frightened, offended, or feels guilty, it will sabotage any of your success to avoid repeating the pain. The script rewriting technique is a powerful psychological tool that allows you to change not the past itself, because facts will remain facts, but its emotional charge and the conclusions you drew then. Let's break down how this works in practice. Recall that very situation from childhood that we discussed earlier. That moment in the store when you were abruptly refused a purchase? Or the moment at the kitchen table when you cringed in fear hearing your parents' shouts about a lack of money? In that situation, you, as a child, felt helpless, dependent, and small. You concluded that money was a threat or that you were unworthy of what you desired. Now, right now, in your imagination, return to that scene. But enter it not as that little boy or girl, but as you are today. Enter there as an adult, a strong, resourceful, confident person who has experience and money. Imagine yourself approaching your younger self in that memory.
Squat down in front of him. Look him in the eyes. At this moment, the magic of reparenting happens. You become the parent for yourself that you needed then. Tell your inner child, I'm here. I came for you. Now I am an adult, and now I am responsible for our safety and for our money. You no longer need to be afraid. Look at that toy or thing that caused tears, and in your imagination, buy it for him. Say, I have money. I can afford this for us. I allow you to want. I allow you to have. Feel how the child's state changes in your visualization, how the tension leaves, how the shoulders straighten, how fear is replaced by joy and a sense of security. This is not just a fantasy. For your brain, which doesn't always distinguish vivid visualization from reality, this is the creation of a new neural connection. You break the link, money equals pain, and create a new one, money equals safety and joy. When you take financial control from a frightened child and transfer it to a confident adult, the need for impulsive spending, which merely tries to drown out old anxiety, disappears. Irrational greed also disappears. You begin to interact with money from a position of calm strength, not scarcity. By regularly practicing this rewriting, returning to different painful episodes, and giving yourself support and resources there, you literally change the foundation of your financial personality. Now we move on to perhaps the most subtle and critically important adjustment of your financial consciousness. This is the formation of an internal right to wealth. Notice, I'm not talking about desiring money, but specifically about the right to it. These are two absolutely different things. Everyone can desire millions, but only those who feel they are worthy of it at the identity level allow themselves to have them. Remember your childhood. If love, attention, and gifts had to be earned by good behavior or excellent grades, then a link was formed in you. I am good only when I am useful or convenient. In adult life, this turns into a scenario of eternal proving. You work to exhaustion, not for money, but to feel valuable. And the paradox is that as long as you try to buy your self-esteem through achievements, money will come to you with enormous difficulty. Self-esteem is your financial thermostat. If internally you feel like you're worth 50,000 rubles, then even if you earn 1 million, you will unconsciously do everything to get rid of it. You will either lose this money, get sick, or be deceived. The psyche simply releases the tension because large resources conflict with your small self-image. The dignity we are talking about here has nothing to do with pride. Pride is a defense.
Dignity is a calm knowing that you are fine by right of birth. You don't need to be perfect to live in abundance. You don't need to suffer to deserve comfort. Many of you live in anticipation that some big grown-up person will come and grant you permission for wealth, as if your parents will finally say, "Well done, now you can take everything from life." But that won't happen. Growing up begins the moment you give yourself that permission. Working with self-esteem in the context of money begins with separating concepts. Your bank account is just numbers. It is feedback from the world on your activity. It is not an evaluation of your personality. If you have little money, you are not a bad person. If you have a lot of money, you are not a saint. As soon as you remove the equality sign between I and my income, you will stop being afraid to take risks. You will stop perceiving financial mistakes as personal failures and start seeing them simply as experience. The right to wealth is a muscular sensation. It's the ability to walk into an expensive store and not feel like an imposter who's about to be exposed. It's the ability to name a high price for your services and not shrink in anticipation of refusal.
It's a state where you understand that the world's resources are limitless, and you have every right to claim your share simply because you exist and you are ready to create value. To rewrite this program, you need to learn to claim your results. People with damaged dignity often devalue their successes, saying they were just lucky. Stop doing that. Every ruble earned is the result of your actions, your decisions, and your energy. Start noticing your strength. Start noticing that you are coping. It is from this calm recognition of your strength that the true right to big money, which no one can take from you, is born. Let's move on to one of the most painful topics for many entrepreneurs and specialists, which is a direct consequence of your upbringing. This is the setting of personal boundaries. In the financial world, this is expressed in two specific actions: the ability to firmly say no to an inconvenient client or project, and the ability to calmly, without a wavering voice, name a high price for your services. If you feel physical discomfort when stating the cost of your work, or if you constantly make concessions just to avoid losing a client, the root of this problem lies in how your boundaries were formed at an early age. Remember, were you allowed to close the door to your room as a child? Did you have the right not to share your toys? Or were you forced to give them away because you couldn't be greedy? If your personal boundaries were constantly violated by parents who entered without knocking, read your messages, or decided for you what you would feel and want, then you did not develop a sense of your own sovereignty. You grew up with the belief that your needs are secondary and the desires of other people are law. Transferring this model into business, you unconsciously perceive the client or employer as a parental figure. Naming a high price for your psyche means risking the relationship. It seems to you that if you demand worthy payment, you will become bad, greedy, or arrogant, and rejection will follow. And for a child, rejection is tantamount to death. It is this irrational, childish fear that makes you dump prices. You lower the price not because the market demands it, and not because you lack competence. You lower the price to buy yourself safety and approval. You are literally paying with your money to remain a good and convenient person in the eyes of others. The same applies to the inability to refuse. If in childhood your no was perceived as a rebellion and punished, or even worse, met with cold ignoring, you learned to be obedient. In adulthood, this leads to taking on too many orders, working nights and weekends, allowing clients to violate your schedule and call at any time. You think this is client orientation, but in reality, it's a lack of psychological skin. You are trying to earn love and recognition through appeasement, just as you tried to earn a smile from your mom or dad. But the paradox of big money is that the market does not pay for obedience. The market pays for expertise and confidence. People willing to pay a lot are not looking for a servant, but a partner, and partnership is only possible between equals. When you cannot name a high price, you transmit insecurity and need, which automatically devalues your product. A high price is not just a number. It is one of the most powerful tools for establishing boundaries. It serves as a filter, weeding out those who are not prepared to value your time and energy. To break through your financial ceiling, you need to separate your self-esteem from other people's reactions. When you name a high price, you are not attacking the client or offending them. You are simply stating the fact of your value. The ability to pause after stating the amount without frantically justifying yourself or offering a discount is the main test of adulthood.
Your money is not in your client's pockets. It is behind the wall of your fear of appearing inconvenient. As soon as you allow yourself to be inconvenient and start protecting your interests as fiercely as you protected your parents' interests to your own detriment, your income will inevitably go up. Remember, boundaries create value. No boundaries, no high price. We have arrived at one of the most powerful tools for transformation, one that works at a biological level, bypassing your resistance and willpower. We've talked a lot about how childhood traumas create a ceiling for your income, but how do you break through that ceiling without spending the next 10 years in psychotherapy? The answer lies in a mechanism that evolution gave us for survival. I'm talking about mirror neurons. This is the very system that, in childhood, made you unconsciously copy your parents' financial habits, fears, and limitations. You didn't choose to fear money or consider it evil. You simply observed significant adults, and your brain recorded their reactions as the only correct instruction for life. The good news is that this learning mechanism doesn't switch off with age. It's working right now, and you can use it to hack your own psyche. To reprogram your financial norm, you need to physically place yourself in the field of people for whom your desired income is not a sky-high dream, but a boring, mundane daily reality. Understand one important thing. Our ancient brain doesn't believe affirmations in front of a mirror. It only believes observable facts and direct experience. When you read a billionaire's biography, you consume information intellectually, but this doesn't change your deep-seated settings. But when you sit at the same table with someone who earns 50 times more than you, and you see how calmly they handle expenses, how easily they talk about risks, how they don't panic from losing money, your mirror neurons start working frantically. They read their micro-expressions, their tone of voice, their relaxed demeanor. At this moment, your brain receives a critically important signal. Such behavior is safe. Big money doesn't kill. This is real. It's accessible to a flesh and blood person sitting right in front of you. This is the process of recalibrating the norm. Right now, your internal thermostat is set to the temperature of your current environment. If all your friends earn $50,000 and save on taxis, then an income of $1 million seems to your brain like a dangerous anomaly, going into open space without a spacesuit. You will sabotage this growth so as not to lose connection with your pack. But once you're in an environment where $1 million is the minimum survival threshold, you'll be surprised to find after a couple of months that your fears dissolve. Not because you've become smarter or read more books, but because for your new pack, it's the norm. You start unconsciously copying their decision-making strategies. You stop looking at money as a scarce resource to be fought over, and you start seeing it as a tool that is abundant in the world. It's important to understand that this is not about networking for selfish gain or handing out business cards. It's about biological mimicry. As a child, you mirrored your parents' anxiety because there were no other examples. Now you have a choice. Your task is to find new mental parents, figures whose financial reality will become your new basic firmware. Remember the cruel rule. If you are the smartest and richest person in the room, then you are not in the right room. You need an environment where you feel a little uncomfortable, where you perceive yourself as not successful enough. It is this discomfort that activates your mirror neurons to their full potential. Your brain will strain to reach the level of those around you, to feel like you belong again.
This is the fastest way to replace old, limiting childhood programs with new algorithms of wealth, simply by allowing your brain to do what it does best: imitate winners. We have come to a critically important point where your childhood programs clash with the harsh reality of the market. Emotional intelligence in business is not about politeness or empathy towards clients, but primarily about your ability to withstand a blow. When a financial loss occurs, a cash flow gap, a failed investment, or a crisis, your brain instantly scans the situation for a threat to life. And here your basic firmware kicks in. If in childhood, safety depended on how good and proper you were, or if your parents conveyed panic terror at the lack of money, then today, losing a certain sum, you don't fall into a work task, but into the state of a small child who is about to be punished. Physiologically, this looks like a cortisol surge, which literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and strategy. You start acting from a fight or flight state, making chaotic movements that often exacerbate losses. The high emotional intelligence of an entrepreneur lies in the ability to notice this trigger and tell yourself, stop. You must be able to separate the fact of losing money from your identity. Losing $1 million doesn't make you a bad person, a failure, or someone unworthy of love, even though an inner voice may insist on it. Stress management begins with the realization that money is a renewable resource, and your psyche is a tool for acquiring it. If the tool is broken by stress, acquisition stops. Instead of falling into guilt or shame, which are typical childhood reactions to a mistake, an adult position requires switching to explorer mode. You ask the question not, why is this happening to me, but what is the price of this lesson and how can I recover it?
Your financial capacity directly depends on your emotional capacity. The greater the stress you can process without breaking down or falling into hysteria, the greater the capital you can manage. Rich people are not distinguished by not losing money, but by not losing themselves at moments when figures and accounts go down. This is the ultimate mastery of reprogramming your script, to react to losses not like a frightened child, but like a cool-headed strategist for whom a crisis is simply part of the landscape. We've arrived at one of the most important points of our journey, and that is changing the fundamental fuel that drives your financial life. All along, we've been analyzing how childhood traumas force us to run from fear, prove our significance, or hide. All of this is united by one heavy word: should. The survival mode is an endless service to anxiety. You work because you should pay bills, you should maintain status, you should be good in the eyes of others or your parents. In this state, money is just a tool for security, a shield from a hostile world, or a way to buy love. But the problem with should motivation is that it relies solely on willpower and cortisol. It's stress. It's guaranteed burnout. It's that financial glass ceiling that's impossible to break through because your psyche doesn't need millions to survive. It only needs a minimum to physically not die. As long as your inner child is scared, it blocks big money because it's associated with danger, responsibility, and extra attention. The transition to creation begins the moment you allow yourself to want. And we're not talking about fleeting whims or infantile consumption here. We're talking about the true adult impulse of a creator. Want motivation is dopamine and genuine interest. In this state, you earn not because you are running from poverty, but because you are genuinely interested in realizing a project, creating a product, expanding your influence, and bringing value.
Money in the creation mode becomes not an end in itself, but a natural side effect of your self-realization, the world's applause for your courage to be yourself. This is a completely different quality of energy. When you act from true desire, you don't get as tired because the process of activity itself energizes you rather than depletes you. To make this transition, you need to start tracking your states. Every time you sit down to work or make a financial decision, ask yourself, am I doing this now to avoid punishment and problems or to create something cool? Am I moving away from fear or towards joy? Stop forcing yourself with rigid discipline where there should be inspiration. You must realize at a deep level that survival is over. You've grown up. Nothing threatens you as it did in childhood. Now you can relax your grip and start building your capital based on interest and passion, not on need and scarcity. We have reached the most important stage. Knowing about the problem is only 10% of success. The other 90% is systematic work on your brain's neural connections. Don't expect instant miracles in one weekend. The psyche is inertial. We will need a year to rewrite scenarios that have been laid down for decades, and here is your roadmap. The first 3 months are the stage of observation and separation. Your main task is to become a researcher of your own mind. Keep a journal of financial triggers. Every time you spend money, receive it, or even just think about a purchase, record the physical reaction of your body. Did your stomach clench? Did anxiety or guilt appear? Whose voice is your inner critic speaking in at that moment? Your mom's saying that money comes with hard work, or your dad's claiming that the rich are thieves? At this stage, there's no need to break anything or make drastic changes. You just need to learn to catch these programs in the act before they take over your behavior. You need to learn to separate yourself from the program, realizing that this thought is not yours, but just a recording on an old cassette. The second stage, from the 4th to the 6th month, is a time for small actions and rewriting experience. We begin to loosen the old system. If your belief says, don't stick out, you deliberately take a step forward, but in safe conditions. Start with microdoses of stress. Buy something a little more expensive than usual and consciously endure the feeling of discomfort without succumbing to it. Ask for a discount or name a price for your services slightly higher than usual. Your task here is not to earn $1 million, but to show your brain's limbic system that there is no punishment after violating a family prohibition. The world hasn't collapsed, no one has rejected you, you are alive. This is how new neural pathways are formed, through real experience of safety. The third quarter, from the 7th to the 9th month, is a time for changing context and environment. It's impossible to fully heal in the same environment that supports your illness. Analyze your social circle. Do your friends and colleagues confirm your old programs of poverty, endlessly complaining about prices, bosses, and the government? You need to start physically placing yourself in the field of people for whom your new financial goals are already a boring norm. Mirror neurons will do half the work for you.
When the brain sees that other people live richly and remain safe and accepted, it begins to copy the strategy as acceptable. And finally, the final stage of the year, the 10th, 11th, and 12th months, is consolidation and integration. By this point, the new way of thinking ceases to cause adrenaline stress and becomes your new comfort zone. Here, you already set ambitious financial goals, not out of need, fear of survival, or a desire to prove something to someone, but out of pure interest and a desire for scale. You no longer fight with yourself, you simply act.
This plan requires iron discipline. There will be setbacks, there will be resistance, and in moments of fatigue, old programs will try to regain control. This is normal. Just keep moving according to the plan, step by step, day by day, because the price of this year's work is your freedom for the rest of your life. We have come to the most important point in our journey. You have already realized your limiting beliefs, seen whose voices echo in your head when it comes to money, and received tools to rewrite these scenarios. But I must warn you of one danger. This is the inertia of thinking. Knowing a problem does not mean solving it forever. Your brain formed these neural connections for decades. These were wide, well-worn highways along which signals traveled quickly and effortlessly. The new beliefs you are now forming are still just narrow paths in a dense forest, and in moments of stress, fatigue, or uncertainty, your brain will automatically try to turn onto the old, familiar highway of poverty and limitations, simply because it's easier and more energy efficient. This is called a relapse, and it is an absolutely normal part of the neuroplasticity process. The main task now is not to never make mistakes, but to shorten the time it takes to return to a conscious state. To solidify your new financial identity, you need a support system. First and foremost, this is your environment. You cannot heal in the same environment that made you sick. If you are surrounded by people who constantly complain about life, the economy, and their bosses, your mirror neurons will copy their behavior, and you will regress. Look for those for whom your desired income level is the norm, not a miracle. Their mindset will become your new benchmark. Secondly, stop relying on motivation and start relying on the discipline of small steps. Global changes frighten our subconscious, causing sabotage. But small, barely noticeable actions bypass the psyche's defense mechanisms. Save at least 1% of your income. Read one page of a financial book a day. Notice one rich opportunity a week. Remember that financial freedom is not just a number on an account. It is a state of inner security and adulthood, where you no longer expect a parental figure to come and solve your problems. You yourself become the author of your life. Every time you catch yourself with an old thought like, "I can't afford this," or "money is dangerous," don't scold yourself. Just note the fact and tell yourself that it was an old program that no longer controls you. Then consciously choose a new thought. This is the work of reprogramming, and it takes time. Be patient with yourself. You are rewriting code that was implanted in you since childhood, and the fact that you have even started this journey already makes you exceptional. Don't let this video become just another piece of information viewed that will fade away tomorrow morning. Turn this knowledge into action right now. Your new reality begins with the decision to never settle for less again. If you feel that this analysis has helped you see the root of your financial problems and you are truly ready to change your life, take this action now. Like this video to keep this impulse of energy, and be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell. We will continue to explore the psychology of success, and I don't want you to miss the next step towards your freedom. See you in new videos.